Jose, is an incredible schos Baruch Hashem to be able to learn today's daf with you. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you in person, but if we can't learn live together, at least we can learn virtually together. Meretz Hashem. So today's daf is Samech Tes 69, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Samech Ches Amud Beis 68b, and we left off 2, 4, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom in at the conclusion of the Ashmedai story. So remember again in yesterday's daf, so we left off with the fact that Shlomo HaMelech was restored to power. The Sanhedrin ended up believing his account of events, gives him a new chain, gives him a new ring, and ultimately again Ashmedai sees him and Ashmedai flies away. Vafilu hachi. Gemara says, despite the fact that Shlomo HaMelech regained the throne, Havile be'usasa mine, he lived for the rest of his life in constant fear of Ashmedai. V'hainu d'chsiv, hine mitaso shal Shlomo, shishim giborim savivla migibori Yisrael, kulam achuzei cherev milumade milchama, ish charbo al yerecho mipachad balelos. So the Gemara discusses over, quotes the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, that literally translated, the bed of Shlomo HaMelech was surrounded by 60 Giborim, 60 strong soldiers, each of them with their sword ready to go. Why did Shlomo HaMelech sleep this way? He lived with a fear. He lived with a fear. He saw what happened with Ashmedai, and that fear, that being dispossessed, what happened to him. Remember, we can't underestimate the traumatic experience that Shlomo HaMelech went through. The idea of being swallowed up, spit out, literally again, expelled to a far-flung land, no one believing you that you say who you are. It's true, he was able to regain, but again, the trauma of the experience left its mark on Shlomo. So the Gemara says, which in and of itself is a fascinating idea, about how Chazal are giving us a window into how traumatic experiences shape people. We like to think that a person undergoes a traumatic experience, Baruch Hashem, it has a happy ending, and they're fine. And we know this. We know this from our own lives, or perhaps we know it because of people who we know who dealt with traumatic experiences. Trauma often leaves its residual mark on the individual. And even if the end of the story, so to speak, works out okay, Lemaisa, the impact of the traumatic experience often leaves, as we said before, that residual effect. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel Chadamar Melech Behedyot, V'Chadamar Melech Behedyot Umelech. So the Gemara over here, it says something very interesting. The Gemara darshans that there's Machlokes Rav and Shmuel about, was Shlomo ever able to regain his footing in the aftermath of the Ashmedai story? So one said Melech, he started out as a king, Behedyot. But the truth is, when he came back to power, he never really resumed, or he was never really restored to his full monarchical glory. Instead, at the end of the day, he was a commoner. Now, of course, it doesn't literally mean commoner, but what it means is that Shlomo HaMelech was never able to regain that monarchical standing that he had before he was displaced by Ashmedai. The Chadamar, the other opinion, said, Melech v'hedyot umelech, that no, Shlomo HaMelech was able to go ahead and regain that monarchical standing as he had before. So there's so much to speak about with this story. I just want to mention that there is a school of thought that understands that this story is much more metaphorical. And in fact, Shlomo HaMelech's battle with Ashmedai was in fact really supposed to represent Shlomo HaMelech's own struggle with his own Yetzer Hara. And Shlomo HaMelech really telling us the story that as much as Shlomo had reached spiritual heights, nevertheless, he experienced a downfall as well, represented by the fact that he was expelled from his throne. He had acquired so much, not just materially, but spiritually as well, and yet was still able to suffer a downfall. Ashmedai representing the Yetzer Hara. And again, of course, if you take that approach in this Gemara, there's an incredible and profound Musar Haskell. And the Musar Haskell is, no matter how spiritually accomplished you may be, one is never guaranteed ongoing success in the world of Ruchnius. One, no matter how great, no matter how righteous, no matter how pious, one could always suffer setbacks within their Ruchnius. And even this last Machlokes, in the aftermath of failure, in the aftermath of spiritual failure, is one able to regain their footing or not? So it's an interesting season, Machlokes Rabbi Shmuel as well. Was it Melech v'Hedyot or Melech v'Hedyot umelech? In the aftermath of profound life failure, in the aftermath of losing your footing, in the aftermath of quote-unquote being expelled from your spiritual kingdom, even if you're able to get back, are you able to get back to what you were before or not? And that Gemara seems to say is a Machlokes as well. Of course, we know Just the corollary to this, as you have the concept of Makom Shabali Tshuva Omdin in Tzadikin Gimurin Omdin, the place where Baal Tshuva stands, even the greatest of righteous people cannot stand. We actually subscribe to this idea that the Baal Tshuva has the ability not only to get back to some previously held greatness, but actually has the ability to even accomplish so much more in the aftermath of failure. In any event, that is the story of Shlomo and Ashmedai. Profound story. So the Gemara now goes weiter back to some of the remedies. L'dama dereisha. So what literally dama dereisha is blood of the head. What does this mean, blood of the head? So Rashi HaKadosh points out, Rashi says over here, Rashi's dama dereisha choli ke'ev harosh haba machmas dam. It's a headache that comes machmas dam as a result of some type of blood disorder. Okay, so what's the halacha? Oh, what do you do? Laisi shervina ubena va'asadara. So bring again, these are all different types of plants. Bring these different types of plants. So this shervina. So again, bina and bina asadara is, so bina is willow and asadara is fresh myrtle. V'zeisa v'chilfa v'chilfi diyama v'yivla. And again, bring these different things: an olive branch, poplar, cloves. V'lishkelinu b'hadi adadi. Cook it all together. The lintel tlas mea kasi ahai gisa dereisha utlas mea kasi ahai gisa dereisha. And again, take the mixture, pour it 300 times on one side of the head and 300 times on the other side of the head, and this will take care of the headache. Vilo, if that doesn't work, leise varda chivra de kai bechad dara. Velishkele, take a rose, a white rose, where all of the petals grow on the same side of the stem. Take off, right, cook it, lishkale, the lintel shise kasi ahai gisa dereisha, and pour 60 cups of it on the side of the head that is painful. Vishisin kasi ahai gisa dereisha, and 60 cups on the other side of the head as well. Okay, litz lichsa, for tzlichsa. So Rashi says, what's tzlichsa? So Rashi says over here, I'm sorry. So Rashi says, ke'ev chatzi harosh, a headache of half of the head. There's different types of headaches. Some a whole head. This is a headache in part of the head, a localized headache. So what does one do? Lacy Tarnagola bra. So take a wild rooster. Remember again, we saw Tarnagola bra. Remember again, that's the creature, that's the animal that was able to get the shamir from the Sardiyama, from the master of the seas, from the Malach who was in charge of the seas. So take this wild rooster. And go ahead and shecht it with a sharpened coin. Ahu gisa de kayivle, and now go ahead and essentially shecht it over your head on the part of the head that's bothering you. But be careful that the blood doesn't go into your eyes, because the blood could cause blindness. After you do that, so in other words, after you allow the blood to go ahead and trickle on the affected part of the head, then take the shechted rooster, go ahead and hang it on the doorway. Okay, and hang it in a way that whenever the person who is ill goes in and out of the house, he brushes against the rooster. We'll say top of Samech Tes on Aleph 69a. So fine, that's what you do for headaches on part of the head. Good. Livurkati. So I'll say or livrukti. So rukti, Rashi points out over here is choli shebayin shekorin taila, some type of eye ailment. So what do you do for the eye ailment? Laisi akaba deshav chumri. Bring a scorpion that has 7 different colors. V'neyapshe betula v'nishchok. Dry it out in the shade, and then grind it up. Take the powder. Tarti minacha kuchla v'chada minasa mine. So go ahead and mix it with some other types of herbs in a 2-to-1 ratio. So take the herbs, right? 2 parts herbs and 1 part scorpion. Then go ahead and apply it 3 times to one eye, and 3 times to another eye. But don't do it more than 3 times in each eye. It literally means the eye is going to explode, the eye is going to burst. But it means is more than 3 times in each eye will adversely impact the eye. Good. Lishavrire delela. So what Rashi points out over here, shavrili delela, is sinurim habaos ala adam balayla. Person who can't see at night. What do you do if you can't see at night? Naisi shudra baraksa. Bring a rope made of animal hair. V'neser chadekara mine v'chadekara mikalba. Interesting idea over here. Tie one side of the rope to your leg, and on the side of the rope to the leg of a dog. V'nitrafu yinuke chaspa basrei. Children, right? Have children behind you rattle around pottery. V'lemrule, and the children should say the following statement: Asa kalba achsa tarnagola. So literally translated, Rashi understands this to mean Asa kalba means an old dog, right? Achsa, like kaas, tarnagola is an angry rooster. V'ligbi sheif umtzi mishiva bati, and then ultimately again collect. The guy who's affected, the guy who's not feeling well because he can't see at night, or I should say not feeling well. The individual who is suffering from this inability to see at night, go ahead and collect 7 pieces of meat, raw meat, from 7 houses. For the svinu nehile b'tzinure didasha, v'nechlinhu b'kilkule demasa. So every person giving him the meat should give him the meat at the doorway, and then the individual who's suffering from the condition of blindness at night ultimately should eat the meat by the garbage dumps of the city. Basar hachi, after this, lifshot shudra barka, he should remove the rope from his leg. V'neim ruhachi, and this is what he should say: Shavriri diploni bar plunisa. So shavriri means the blindness of so and so, right? So and so, the son of so and so. Shefkinu diploni bar melanisa. Blindness should leave me alone, right? Should leave alone the son of so and so, the son of so and so. V'lechru lekalba bevavisa de'ena, and then blow into the pupil of the dog's eye. Okay? Lishravrire diyama. Let's say a person suffers from the inability to see by day. So what should he do? Leise shiva sumki migava de chevasa. So this is actually interesting. He should take 7 spleens from 7 animals which were just shechted. V'natvinu achaspa du'umana v'leiset iu migavai. So what happens? He should roast them. Now, interesting, what does she roast? Achaspa du'umana. Remember, an umana is a blood letter. So chaspa du'umana means the pottery kli of a blood letter. This Rashi points out over here, this was the Rashi says, Achaspa du'umana kli cheres minuval shemakizn l'socho dam. This was the receptacle in which the blood letter would collect the blood. Okay, so what should he do? Then ultimately again, so the person who's affected by blindness, daytime blindness, ultimately should sit inside a house. Somebody else, he should get another guy, he should sit outside. And the blind man, again, the guy who has the daytime blindness, should say, Havli de'echol, give me the spleens, right? The spleens are talking, give me them to eat. And the one who's able to see should say to the blind guy, save echol, take it and eat it. Ubasra da'achil, after the blind guy eats the spleens, litbre lechasma, he should break the pottery utensil of the blood letter, di'ilo hadri iluye, because if not, the blindness could return to him. Incredible. L'dama da'asim nechira, for a nosebleed. Leise gavra kohen deshmei Levi. Listen to this. He should find the kohen whose name is Levi. V'lichtov la Levi lemafrei, and the guy should write his name. He should write his name Levi backwards. V'ilo leise inishme alma v'nichtov le, and if not, if he can't find the kohen by the name of Levi, he should find a regular guy, and the regular guy should write the following: Ana papi shila barsumki lemafreya. He should write the phrase Ana papi shila barsumki. Should write that phrase backwards. V'ilo, and if he can't do that, nichtov tam dli b'meichasev. Ultimately, again, he should write the following. He should write literally again, the taste of the bucket in silver water. Tam deli b'mi pagam. Taste of a bucket in spoiled water. V'ilo, and if this doesn't work, laisi ikra das pasta. He should bring the root of an aspasta plant. Va'ashla de poria atika. V'kuntama umariki. He should bring the rope of an old bed. Remember again, their bed used to be made of a series of ropes. He should bring the rope from an old bed and a little bit of paper and moriki, v'sumka diluliva, and the red part of a palm branch, v'naklinhu bahadi hadadi, and burn them all together. And then v'laisi gevava de amra, bring a ball of wool, v'nigdol tarti pisilasa, v'litam bechala, take two threads, take the threads, dip them in vinegar, then roll it in the ashes, right? Remember again the ashes that we made before, and then put it in your nostrils. I guess this was before you could just apply pressure and stop the nosebleed. This a bit more of a complicated situation. And if that either if that doesn't work or if you can't do that, and go ahead and literally find the body of water that flows from east to west. Step over the small body of water. So stand with one foot on one side of the stream, another foot on the other side of the stream. This is actually interesting. So take mud with your right hand from underneath your left foot. And then take mud with your left hand from underneath your right foot. Take two strands of wool. Then go ahead and roll them in the mud. Then stick that in your nose to stop the nosebleed. Okay, v'ilo, and if this doesn't work, you should sit underneath a spigot, a spout of water. And ultimately, again, you should have other people bring the water, have them pour it into the spout. V'leimru, kihechi de paski hanimaya, lifsuk dame de planya bar planisa. Just as the waters are going to stop, ultimately, again, the nosebleed of so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, should also stop as well. Okay. Lidama de asi mipuma, for blood that comes out of the mouth. What does one do? So batkina lebigila dechitza. So isarich merea kaasi v'islei takanta. So this is interesting. So what do? So you take a piece of wheat. So a person is bleeding from the mouth. If the blood sticks to the wheat, so the Gemara says that indicates that what? That the blood is coming from the lungs. V'ilo, but if the blood doesn't stick to the wheat, mechabda kaasi is coming from the liver. V'leslei takanta. And if the blood is coming from the liver, then unfortunately there's no cure for this. Amar le Rabbi Ami le Ravashi v'hanan ipchatinan. Says the Gemara, but we learned just the opposite. Literally translated, they will say we are now right. So nital hakavi v'lo nishtayer heimena klum. That if the Gemara talks about again. So we'll say the context over here. Rashi points out is what kind of animal ultimately again is a treifa. So the Gemara says that if the liver was taken out and nothing remains of it, or hareya shenikba oshechasra, or ultimately again if the lung was punctured or there's a part of it that's missing it. So we'll say, what do you see from here? Rashi points out, you see from here that obviously a treifa in the lungs is more significant than a treifa in the liver. Yet the Gemara just said before that if the blood sticks to the piece of wheat, then it's from the lungs. If it doesn't stick from the piece of wheat, then it's from the liver, and it's from the liver. There's no cure. So that makes sense. The liver's worse. Armarle kevan demipume kaasi. Eimar ismuche ismach. Ultimately, again, since the blood is coming from the mouth, the Gemara says we have to be concerned that the liver mamish fully dissolved. Okay? So the Gemara says, Amar Mar. So Mar said as follows, Imerea ka'asi islei takanta. If the blood is coming from the lungs, ultimately, again, there is a remedy. Mai takante. So what does the Gemara say? So we are now 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 lines up from the bottom. Sorry, I should have mentioned that before. So my takante. So ultimately, again, how do you remedy if the blood is coming from the lungs? Lesi shiva kuni mi pirma de silka, the shiva kuni pirma de karsi. So go ahead and take 7 fistfuls of beets, 7 fistfuls of leeks, the chamishe kuni pereda, and take 5 fistfuls of this spice called prida, utlasa kuni de talfichi, 3 fistfuls of lentils, the kuna de kamona, a fistful of kamona of cumin, the kuna de chavli, and a fistful of chavli, ukinegdan kansa petirta v'libasha v'leichol. So go ahead and also take also an amount of fat from a firstborn animal, cook it all together, and afterwards go ahead and drink beer, strong beer that ultimately was made in the month of Teves. Okay, likacha. So ultimately, we'll say if a person has a toothache, what should they do? Amra barafuna laisi tuma yichida v'nim srei b'mashicha umilcha. So go ahead and take a clove of garlic, and go ahead and grind it together with oil and salt. V'nesvei aturfai di'ilana dahu gisa dekaivle, and go ahead and put it on the thumbnail. Put on the thumbnail on the side of your mouth that hurts you. So in other words, put it on the side of the mouth that hurts you. V'nehadule gandafno delisha v'neiz daher lebisrei dekasha lechivra, and then go ahead and surround it with dough. But be careful that the garlic doesn't touch your body to kasha lechivra, because it could cause leprosy. It could cause leprosy, not really saras, leprosy. Lichinche, Shabbos say. So this is actually interesting. Rashi points out over here what's chinche. So Rashi says Abu Baos hagedilim bigaron kamin galnat ubalash romi. So this is actually interesting. He says it's Abu Baos, usually are like boils or blisters that ultimately grow inside the throat. So this is some type of throat condition. So lechinchi, what do? So this is actually interesting. Multiple steps over here. Am Rabbi Yochanan chumsi ki mamri. So we'll say these are different types of spices. So chumsi is as good as mamru. Ve'ikra dechusmi adif. V'niktam b'pumei. Hani la'okmei. So we'll say, so ultimately again, so then the Gemara also says that these are all just different spices. Ikra dechusmi, the root of this chusmi is better even than mamri. And what should you do? You put it in your mouth. What does this do in your mouth? Hani la'okmi. Ultimately again, this takes down swelling. Livashule. So we'll say then the next part you have to do is Livashule. You ultimately again you want the pus to gather up. Laisi pa'ari diresh nafya v'tafechei ba'afraihu v'shuvlilta v'chumarta dikshusa. So what should you do? You should go ahead and bring bran. Take bran. Ultimately again then bring lentils together with some dirt and hops. And then go ahead and keep a small amount of this in your mouth. Okay? So ultimately, again, about say, so now that you've gathered the pus, you want it to come out, you want it to drain. So what do? So ultimately, again, one person, so you should take a healthy person, and he should blow cress seeds into the mouth of the person who's afflicted with this. La suke. We'll say, so now you've drained the pus. So how do you heal the skin? Laisi afra mitula de besakese. This is interesting. Bring dust from the shade of a toilet, shade of a bathroom. V'nigbol beduvsha. Mix it with honey. The ma'alila, because it's good. I will say you mix it with honey and you eat it. It's interesting. So that's the way ultimately again to heal the skin. Livarsem. So we'll say for varsem. Now what's varsem? So Rashi says over here. Rashi says, "Varsem choli shekorin sur v'hu ba min harosh derech hachotam." So apparently, again, this is also some type of head ailment, but that begins ultimately in the nose. Okay, so what do you do? For varsem, laisiki piskisa denishrar v'chi amaguza dechalbina duvshina. So we'll say, so you're bringing all of these different herbs, right? Different amounts of these herbs, and you're going to mix them. Mix them with a spoonful of white honey. And ultimately take a certain amount of wine from mechuza. Cook them all together. And ultimately again make sure that the entire mixture is cooked, and then drink it. Okay, v'ilo, and if this doesn't work, or you don't have available the ingredients for this remedy, laisir the asad the chalava the iza chivartoni. Bring a revius of the milk of a white goat. We're now on Samech Tesam Beis 69b. V'netaife atlas kalchi kirbaba v'nach b'shei begavza marin v'chibashal gavza marin basha lekule. So ultimately, the Gemara says, what do? You take then this mixture, you let it drip over some cabbage. Then ultimately, again, cook everything together, including again, you're also using a piece of wood to stir everything. Cook everything together. V'chibashal gavza marin basha lekule. And ultimately, again, when the piece of wood is cooked, that's indicative that the rest of the mixture is cooked as well, and you should drink the entire mixture. Ve'ilo, and if you can't do this, Laisi nafki de kalba chivra. Interesting. Bring the excrement of a white dog, vinigval binatva, and go ahead and mix it together with balsam oil and eat it. However, nafka lo nechol. It's actually a good piece of advice. When at all possible, don't eat excrement, demifrak, because ultimately, again, it's not good for the body. So again, pick up a lot of wisdom along the way over here. So don't eat excrement, the Gemara says, because excrement ultimately, again, is harmful. So what's interesting over here, I'll just mention, there's Moser Haskell and everything. So what it's saying is, on one hand, it's saying the remedy is excrement, but then it's to just understand that although excrement could go ahead and heal one thing, ultimately it could have deleterious effects in other areas as well. There's a beautiful Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim says that in the bracha of Asher Yatza that we say after using the bathroom, we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Rofei Kol Basar, Umafli la'asos. He goes ahead and he heals all flesh, and he does wondrous things. And the Chafetz Chaim says something amazing. He says, the man has the ability to heal also, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the chachma of medicine, so we have the ability to heal also. But what's interesting about human healing is that often when you heal one thing, you adversely impact something else. I will say, like the most dramatic example of this is like, a person has cancer, so some type of chemotherapy, radiation, and it's incredible. What are you doing? You're killing the cancer. But in the course of killing the cancer, you're often killing off a person's immune system, which goes in and makes them susceptible to all other kinds of disease as well. So when man tries to heal one thing, often it comes at the expense of something else. The Ribono Shel Olam is the only holistic healer in this world. Kadosh Baruch Hu could heal a person in totality. That's the godless, that's the greatness of the Ribono Shel Olam's healing. So it's incredible. So here, excrement is a major ingredient in healing this particular malady. But yet again, the Gemara says just understand, but whenever possible, don't use excrement because it's not good for the body. Okay, incredible. Legira. Shabbos say we are now Samech Tesamad Beis. We are 2, 4, 5 lines down. Legira. So the Gemara ultimately says, what is gira? What is gira? So Rashi points out over here. Rashi says, Choli Shekor. So again, so it seems to be that it's some type of, the Rabbeinu Chananel points out over here, also the Marshal points out over here, some type of heart condition. So the gira, Laisi gira de lisa. So literally again, it's literally bring a gira de lisa, it's a type of plant, right? Vinafche, turn it upside down. Vinishte maya ilave vinishte, pour water over it and drink it. Ve'ilo, and if this doesn't work, Laisi maya de ishte minao kalba balayla. Bring water that a dog drank from at night. But again, be careful in general about drinking any kind of water that's been left open overnight. Ligiluya. So we'll say, interestingly enough, what happens if a person did drink water that was left open overnight? Mayim giluyim. So the Gemara says, what do you do for that? Anpika de chamra chaya. You drink an unpicked. It's an amount of undiluted wine. So we'll say that's a secondary thing. In other words, if in the course of trying to heal this, so the Gemara says one of the ways in which you heal this heart condition is to go ahead and drink water that a dog drank from at night. But if a dog drank from it at night, Pashas, it was uncovered at night. Remember, it was constant mashkin giluyim of drinking liquids that were left uncovered overnight. There's a concern that perhaps a snake injected some venom into it. So if it turns out that you drank from that, the remedy for that. So we'll say, so once again, it's the same you saw, like we just said before. In human healing, you need a remedy for the remedy. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Rofei Kol Basar. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could deliver healing that is healing in totality. Incredible. So you watch Lemursa. Right, so mursa anpika, so abscesses, anpika de chamra ba'ala talana. So we'll say again, you drink wine mixed with aloe. Okay, the pircha deliba. So we'll say, so pircha deliba. Rashi points out it's for a person who faints. Misalif, person who faints. Laisi telas burushayasa desari. So bring 3 loaves of barley bread. So ultimately, again, soak them in this concoction, right? Soak them. Ultimately, Rashi actually points out that chamka is kusach. So soak it. So take 3 loaves of barley bread, soak it in kusach that's less than 40 days old, and eat it. And afterwards drink watered down wine. I don't understand, this type of concoction is going to make a person feel even more faint. Amrle, Anali Yukra Deliba Amri. Oh, no. I wasn't talking about, again, a fainting issue, but rather, again, I will say somebody actually who's suffering. Yukra Deliba literally means heaviness of the heart. Lepircha Deliba, but if a person is suffering from fainting, Laisi Telas Burshayasa Dechiti, bring 3 loaves of wheat bread, Vinishtarya Beduvsha, soak it in honey, Vinechol, Vinishtia Basaya Chamra Chayo, and then drink undiluted wine afterwards. Litzirva Deliba, we'll say, what does a person do if they have pain of the heart? Laisi Tlas Be'ininaina, ultimately take three egg volumes of mint, ubayasa de kamona, and 1 egg amount of cumin, ubayasa de shimshina, and 1 egg volume of sesame, v'leichol, and eat it all together. Incredible. Lekavd mei, for intestinal pain, laisi tlas mea pilpali arichta, nishti mea minaya bechamra. So go ahead and take 300 kernels of pepper, and every day drink 100 of them in a mixture with wine. Ravin de Narish avid leila barte de Ravashi. So Ravin of Narish once did this for Ravashi, for the daughter of Ravashi, who was dealing with this type of pain. And ultimately, again, they used 150 of the peppers that grow in Bavel. This time she was healed. Lekirtza. So we'll say Kirtza, Rashi points out, are internal worms in the intestines. So what should you do? Anpika de chamra ba'atrafa de ara. Ultimately, again, so take it, unpick as of wine, and mix it with leaves. Lekirtza chivra, for this type of white worm, so white intestinal worm. Laisi bizra galgila, so bring a seed from a particular plant. Vinitzaira b'shistag, vinitaira b'maya, vinizdarme binse, di'ilo, so okay, I'm sorry. Vinitzaira b'stinta, so wrap it in a piece of cotton. Vinitaira b'maya, soak it in water. Vinishte, drink the water. Vinizdarme binsa, di'ilo minkavala lo ma'ayana. But ultimately, again, be careful, because apparently these kernels could be sharp, and they could chas v'shal perforate something internally. Lemesar. So I will say, so Mesar, Rashi brings down that a person is suffering from diarrhea, and now they want to stop the diarrhea. So what do? Sisin retiva b'maya lemishra yiveshta b'maya. So go ahead and take this type of plant, right? This sisin, right? So literally, again, moist sisin. So soak it in water. That ultimately opens up the bowels. Okay? Yiveshta b'maya. Ultimately, again, so what happens if halacha? So I'm sorry, just the opposite. So the mesar means you want to stop diarrhea. If you want to stop diarrhea, take this sisin plant and eat it when it is moist. When it's moist. Lemishra, if a person, let's say, is constipated, they want to be able to relieve themselves, yeveshta b'maya, then take this dried plant and ultimately, again, soak it in water. The Gemara says, v'simanach, how do you remember which is which? Itzirativa de sachar nara. So literally, again, it's fresh itzah that goes in and closes off the river. Okay, l'tachla. So the Gemara goes right there. So what about tachla? Bosai means a person has some type of spleen disorder. Rashi points out over here that the spleen is swollen. So what do? Laisi shev b'nei demayev nebeshina betula. So take 7 leeches. Dry them out in the shade. And every day, it's actually interesting, every day for a couple of days, drink a couple of them in wine. It's fascinating. V'ilo, and if for some reason either you can't do this or it doesn't work, laisi tachala de tzefirta de lo iftich. So go ahead and take the spleen of a goat that doesn't have any children. V'nitachya betanura v'noki lahadei v'nema. Go ahead and roast it on the inside of an oven, and you should say the following: Kihechi diyavish haytachla niyabish tachala de ploni bar plunisa. The same way as this spleen of this shecht animal, this goat, is dried up, so too again the spleen of so and so, the son of so and so, should also dry up. Dry up also means that swelling should come down. Nitachye beni arve de bein secharata. And ultimately, again, v'ilo, and let's say a person doesn't do this, either they tried it didn't work, or they can't do it for whatever the reason. Nitachye bene urvi de beisa charata. Take the spleen of this goat that didn't have any children, and put it in between the bricks of a house. B'nei mahachi, and ultimately say the same thing, the same recitation that we just said before. Vilo, and if this doesn't work, so lifke shichva de shache b'shab. So it's interesting. So find someone who died on Shabbos. V'nishkale the yade v'nosva atachle. Take the hand of the person who passed away, put it on your spleen, v'nema, and say, Ki hechi diyavish hayada niyabesh tachale de ploni bar ploni. So just as this hand has dried up, so too the spleen. My spleen should dry up as well. V'ilo, and if either again you can't do it or this didn't work, naisi bein sa, v'netavye bein nafcha. Take a fish, roast it on coals, v'nechli b'mayid bein nafcha, and eat it. First, dip it in the water, dafka the water of like an ironworker, a blacksmith. And afterwards, drink from the blacksmith's water as well. And out of all of them, this last one really seems to be the best. I don't know. Comparing all the different possibilities, I think I would go with the fish in the blacksmith's water. Anyway, the Gemara says as follows: Hahu iza davis shas yamayid bein nafcha. There was a certain goat that used to always drink out of the blacksmith's water. When they shechted it, they found that it didn't have a spleen. So the Gemara brings this up. This is why the chap is that if a person has a swollen spleen, ultimately, again, part of the remedy is the blacksmith's water. So whatever it is, maybe it's just the combination of the iron and the water, but somehow takes down spleen swelling. Okay? So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says v'ilo, and if you can't do anything that we mentioned before, then lifta chavisa dechamra lishmei. Then ultimately open up your own barrel of wine. So apparently, also drinking wine, a lot of wine, takes down spleen swelling. So actually, maybe on second thought, maybe this is the preferred approach for spleen swelling. So Amalei Rav Acha bereid Rav Ashi I isli chavisa dechamra lo asi lekame dimar. So I will say, but one second, if halacha lemaisa, if a person has their own wine and they're drinking a lot of wine, they're never going to suffer from a bloated spleen to begin with. So what's the issue? Ella margel bepas shachris. Rather, Rabbi say the Gemara says as follows: that halacha lemaisa. So in other words, this is a little bit proactive. So if a person doesn't have a lot of wine, at least what they should do is make sure that they're always eating bread in the morning, for this is beneficial to a person's health, general bodily health. Le rush chasa. Rashi says rush chasa are hemorrhoids. For hemorrhoids, Rashi says tachtonios. Also, by the way, I meant to mention before, Rashi on this staff goes on both sides. So again, this is Rashi on the left-hand side. It's the first of the short lines. The Rush Chasa, for hemorrhoids, Laisi Akika ve'ivla va'as pircha umartacha. So you bring all of these things. Now, the truth is, Akika and Ilvasa are acacia and aloe. These other things are different types of herbs. Is pircha, martacha, chumrasa de pilon, v'shi'afa de chamisa. And what should you do? Take all of these items. So, and what should you do with it? You should vininkat b'shachaki de kisna b'kaita. Wrap them all up in flax during the summertime. Vida amar gufna b'sifta, or use cotton so use flax during the summer, cotton during the winter, and then you place it, you take all of these things, you wrap it in the cotton or the flax depending on the season, and you place it on top of the hemorrhoids. V'ilav, but if you can't do this, lishti shichra marka, drink watered down beer. Apparently watered down beer is also beneficial for hemorrhoids. So the Gemara says, li shigruna, for shigruna. So what's shigruna? So Rashi says over here again, shigruna is chola hayrechayim v'hakil boses. So apparently again it's some type of holy, some type of illness that impacts the thighs and the hips. So what should you do? Laisi pasya dimunini. So go ahead and bring a pot of brine of small fish. V'negade shisin zimni aha matachase, v'shisin zimni aha matchase, and rub it 60 times on this hip and 60 times on this hip. Litzimarta. So I will say, so tzimarta sounds like here Rashi says over here. Rashi says tzimarta is even hagedela begid va'otzaras hashasan. He's talking about a stone that's obstructing a person's ability to urinate. So it could be kidney stones, although this sounds like it's actually in the aver itself, actually like in the actual urinary tract. So again, some type of kidney stone or some type of stone that's obstructing a person from urinating. So what should you do? So the Gemara says, that's Samirta. Naisi telas nitufaisa mishcha de kufra. Utlas nitufaise itzra de karsi. So go ahead and bring 3 drops of oil and 3 drops of liquid from a leek. Utlas nitufaise de chamer nikida, and 3 drops of clear wine. Velishti leile ish ba'ama, and insert this mixture inside of the aver. Actually, inside of the makom milah. And for a woman, she should place it in the makom erva as well. They should literally. So again, whether it's a man or a woman suffering from this, essentially you insert it. For a man, you insert it into the makom milah. For a woman, ultimately, again, you insert it ba'osa makom in the makom erva. V'ilo, and if not, laisi uno de zika. So bring literally again a flask, but litli leile ish ba'ama, and allow the man to hang the flask from the makom milah, from the aver, uleisha bidadin, and a woman can hang the flask from her breasts. The Gemara says v'ilo, and if this doesn't work, so laisi chuta de zehirta tishad te duma bas duma. Okay, so we'll say this is interesting. If that doesn't work, then what should you do? Go ahead and bring red thread that was spun by a harlot who's the daughter of a harlot. And let the man hang it from the makom milah, and v'leisha bidadon, and for a woman from her dadaim, from her breast, v'ilo, and if that doesn't work, laisi kina de zachar unekeva. So what's interesting? Bring a louse from the body of a man and of a woman, v'litlu leish ba'ama, and for a man hang the louse from the makom milah, uleisha ba'osa makom, and for a woman hang it. Rashi actually says over here, the Maharsha brings this down also. It's not clear if they're saying to hang it or to insert it. Okay. V'chimashtin, and then when the person urinates, nashtin asisna yeveshta bitzinura didasha. So urinate, we'll say literally on a dry place, literally dry thorns, dry place by the doorway, and ultimately, again, he should be on the lookout. We'll say the goal over here is we want to see time to urinate on a dry place by the doorway. We want him to see what he's urinating, or her to see what they're urinating. We want to see if they've passed the stone. Ultimately, we'll say why? Because first, I want to see if they passed the stone. Apparently, the stone itself has curative powers. So therefore, again, what the Gemara is saying is, once you pass the stone, hold on to it, because the ma'asid has some curative powers as well. Okay, so the Gemara goes out to the Gemara says, Litzimra bira, for fever. What should you do? The Gemara says, Laisi tlasa grivi sufli, utlasa grivi atraf, v'nishkalinu kol chad lechudei. So what should you do? So I will say, so tlasa grivi sufli, Rashi points out, is 3 sa'ah of date pits. Tlasa grivi atraf is 3 sa'ah of these leaves, and cook it all together. Nishkalinu kol chad lechudei, boil them each separately, v'leisev beinaihu. And then ultimately, again, sit in between them. Okay? V'lesvinhu betarti mishchali, and ultimately, again, put these items into 2 different pots. V'naisi pesura, and then go ahead and bring a table. V'nanach iluya, then again, ultimately rest for a little while on the table. V'nekum mi'iloi hai v'losiv aloi hai, and then go ahead. Ultimately, what's this? Interesting. Get up, sit by one basin, and then get up and sit by a different basin. Until ultimately, again, the vapor from both of the basins enters into the person's body. Then ultimately, again, wash with this water and drink it. And when you drink, when you drink, make sure you only drink from the water that was mixed with the leaves. Don't drink with the water ultimately again that was mixed or that is cooked with the date pits, mishum de me'akri. Because interestingly enough, apparently again the water of the date pits could chas v'shalom cause a person to be sterile. So I will say, okay, a lot of stuff going on over here. So, what do we take away from this? So I will say, of course, as I mentioned on Shabbos, it's kedai to mention it again, so the rest of the could hear it as well. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zecher Tzadik Livracha writes in his Shilas Tshuva, is actually quoted in the opening section, introduction of the Nishmas Avram. He quotes the idea that Chazal's conception of medicine was not uniquely Torah. Chazal's conception of medicine often, again, was reflective of society's greater understanding of medicine. So a lot of these cures that we're seeing over here are not uniquely Jewish. This was representative of medicinal healing of the time. And Rabbi Shlomo Zalman actually says that it is usher for a person to try this type of medicinal healing. It's usher because there's nothing uniquely Jewish about this, but rather, again, it's reflective of the medicine of the time. And again, medicine has advanced, of course, since the time of the Gemara, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, Shlomo Zalman says it is usher to try this type of remedy at home. So, what is the message for us? So, what is the message? And I think on a very beautiful level, the whole idea, the beauty of Torah, is hafach ba v'hafach ba dekula ba. Everything is in Torah. Everything is here. Now, while it's true that at times Chazal went ahead and grabbed from the knowledge available to greater society, and obviously, again, as mankind progresses, so that knowledge ultimately, again, has now evolved. That's not true with Torah. That's true ultimately, again, with the medicine that Chazal are espousing. But part of the beauty of Osai is that, and the beauty of Gemara, the beauty of Torah, is that it has everything. It has everything. It has how to heal your body. It has how to heal your soul. Now, while it's true, the parts that tell you how to heal your body, those are dated and reflective of medical knowledge of the time. The parts that tell you how to heal your soul, those parts are timeless. Those parts are true for all eternity. So whereas the medicinal healing, we look at it like, wow, that is fascinating. Absolutely not going to try any of this. Usher to try any of this. That which Chazal told us that perhaps to heal the guf is dated and has evolved. But whatever Chazal tell us about how to heal, to nourish and to nurture the soul, that knowledge is true. That knowledge is unequivocal MS. That knowledge is eternal, and that's the type of knowledge we have to internalize. So we'll say, stop over here for today. Shkoyach, I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you in person. Looking forward to Meretz Hashem. Continuing on Tuesday morning in person. Shkoyach, and have a great day.